Good afternoon. Then I'll try to present this time this higher education, the involvement of higher education in Africa within this consortium to DRR. Now it's well accepted by the whole scientific community that we should rethink universities. Maybe universities were thought for some preoccupation of the past, but in this 20th century, I believe, and particularly in disaster risk reduction, we have to rethink the role of higher education institutions for DRR. This is a collaborative program in capacity development in DRR through 10 African universities. This program is supported by the USAID and is done with the universities. What I'm going to present this overview. This is shaking off the past. That's what I have said. We have to rethink the university system all over the world by shaking off the past barriers to scholarly engagement in the disaster domain. African higher education institutions, their role in risk reduction capacity building, what they're doing. And Periperi U, this is innovation for African higher education institutions in disaster risk reduction. This is rational for shaking off past barriers, what we have had all these years, past barriers to scholarly engagement in the disaster domain. Strengthening applied disaster risk scholarship in African institutions of higher learning means reversing the legacy of reactive disaster response associated with international humanitarian assistance. That is what was predominant all over these years. And that has been historically delinked from the continent's higher education institutions. That's the reality, what was happening. And it's rooted in decades of well-intentioned external humanitarian assistance with governmental dependence on external aid. This is why we have a lot of NGOs, like Bangladesh, 10,000 NGOs working there, based on humanitarian. This is humanitarian emergency disaster. This is the disaster. What's going to happen? Local capacity overwhelming, because this is disaster. Resources are not enough. Then they have to call the international appeal, external aid, and humanitarian will be there, NGOs, then waiting for the next one. If you see, but where is the link to higher education institution? No links, no learning, no research. Then what have been the consequences for Africa's higher education institutions? External locus of disaster management responsibility. If you look what's going to happen in Africa, see, international funding, money is coming to Africa through capacity building, northern education training research partners, just from the north. All these experiences are going to the northern universities and coming back to capacity building, learning from the fields, and coming back to external locus in disaster management. And other social responsiveness or academic outcomes, publication, personal network, this is all from the northern hemisphere. Then African higher education institution excluded. They're not there, waiting just for external aid and humanitarian NGOs. And we don't accept it anymore. We have other preoccupation today. This is African higher education institution. They should be within the game, in the role. But rising awareness of DRR as a local and national development priority has increased demand. Skilled human resources, locally and nationally. Risk reduction scholarship in African higher education institution, DRR-related academic programs, which is very important, as we are doing in this consortium. Contextually relevant, robust, and responsive, plus applied research capacity to support local risk reduction planning and implementation. These profiles and relinks put a link to higher education institutions in Africa as key partners. They're going to play, from now on, a good role in disaster risk reduction. Look what's going to happen. Primary, national, and municipal locus DRM responsibility going to governmental and local role, players, local capacity building, research, national sub-regional education, training, university, schools, and learning, other education, training, and research partners. International assistance will come, but after a while. And capacity building, and these African higher education institutions, they are central partners. The pivot of this DRR will be African higher education and research institutions. Conceptually, from an education perspective, the disaster risk domain is disciplinary and multidisciplinary. From engineering, hard sciences, to human sciences, to social sciences, all they must work together to understand the conceptualization within individual disciplines as engineering or public health, and transdisciplinary, it must integrate knowledges across different disciplines, putting things together and actively engage scholarship. But this is challenging for African institutions of higher education. And it's a difficult problem for us to solve. How do we build appropriate DRR, knowledge management architecture for different disciplines, language organization, and context, so we align educational efforts with those of other interested groups, stakeholders, but we do not constrain responsiveness innovation. This is introducing Periperi U, partnership for enhancing resilience to people exposed to risk. This is the Periperi U. And U, big U, is for universities, higher education institutions, educational innovations, and disaster risk capacity building in Africa. Pilot year was 2007 and 2008. Current project 2008 and 2011. It's going to finish in June. You see the map. The map here from Algeria, Francophone, like Algeria in the north and Madagascar, South Africa in the south, Ghana in the west to Tanzania, Uganda in the west. This is the consortium. A quick overview of the aim is building sustainable multitasking capability in disaster risk and vulnerability reduction in 10 African higher education institutions, mobilizes local energies and skill to build context-specific disaster risk-related capabilities in formal education, short course of training, local research, risk and vulnerability reduction, and policy. And you see here people, researchers and working. This is a simulation of a disaster, a table simulation. Hydrometeorological risk, thematic focus, urban risk, disaster, all the type of disaster depending on the environment and the geographical location of the university. As Algeria, we're doing with earthquake risk reduction for all over the continent. Results so far, could you see the results of these? Facts since 2008. 38 courses in 9 countries have been organized and developed to December 2010. By June 2011, 1,200 to 1,500 expected participants to these short courses. 38, and you see the discipline diversity, economy evaluation tools applied in DRM. This is Madagascar, Antananarivo. You have community-based disaster risk reduction, BDU, Barhi Dar in Ethiopia. You have fire safety and risk assessment, Moi University in Kenya. GIS, GPS applied disaster management. This is UDM in Mozambique. You have new academic programs. By June 2011, postgraduate enrolled or completed degrees. Antananarivo, Madagascar, disaster and risk management. You have BDU, this is Ethiopia, Master of Science in disaster risk science and sustainable development. You have the Gaston Berger University in Senegal, food security and the reduction. You have the number of enrollment. And you have the UDM master degree in disaster risk reduction. And we have USTHB. This is Algeria University of Science and Technology, Hawari Boumediene, Master of Science in Earthquake Engineering and Disaster Risk Management. And you have already a rich melange of postgraduate research, and you have flood trends and hard livelihood, and 2 cases of Fogara, and this is BDU assessing drought-related. You have this exploration of adaptive strategies. You have food security. You have the vulnerability to food security and the assessment of environmental public health risk. The already locally commissioned technical support for DRM, like radar for commissioned and consultancy, DIMP with the South Africa, working with the DFID and UDM. We have made 13 booklets on disaster risk management, RD, disaster risk and capacity needs. The challenges, we have higher education institutions not geared to social responsiveness projects, fast-paced application and interdisciplinary fields, short course adult education, facilitation style and organization, language challenges, we have French, we have Portuguese, Arabic, and in English, DRR material mainly in English, need French, Portuguese, Arabic, Kiswahili, Xhosa, and Malagasy, Madagascar, translation, of course. And the future, what is the future of this consortium? Periperi U gives us a nascent continental architecture for strategic DRR capacity building, and 300 postgraduate students poised to complete applied, contextually relevant risk reduction, and many with capacity to advance in PhDs. Now we have PhDs in this. Periperi U proves the continent's potential to generate DRR surge. Then this shows to African continent and higher education institution all over the whole African continent, then we can do something for DRR within our university by the African experts and researchers. In human capital, if we mobilize our higher education institutions, a follow-on project is under development for submission, but February to 11, it has been done for support. And for information on Periperi U, partners, check out with www.riskreductionafrica.org. And thank you very much for your attention. If you have some question, please.
There's perhaps one other initiative that could be mentioned, and that's JAMBA, the African Journal of Disaster Risk Studies, which is edited from the University of Potchefstroom in South Africa. I've recently been put on the editorial board. My experience of 26 years of editing journals is that they tend to define themselves by what is submitted. JAMBA clearly needs a good flow of high-quality applied science articles so that it can prove itself as a source of useful expertise for African disaster reduction. So if anyone has anything they can submit to it, I'm sure that would be much appreciated by the editor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, for JAMBA, I am in the editor board of JAMBA with DeWalt. Yeah, this is a good initiative also to show what we are doing in our university and the research work with JAMBA. Yes, thank you.
Je vais intervenir en français, Daouda Sanou de CRS IT. Ce que je dirais, c'est que déjà c'est une très bonne initiative et déjà la chose devait être prise en compte au niveau du document stratégique africain d'abord. Je pense qu'il y a importance vraiment que ce soit quelque chose qui soit mis en œuvre parce que les gens mettent beaucoup plus l'accent aujourd'hui sur la réponse que sur la prévention. Et si on commence déjà à utiliser ces expertises-là, à former le plus de cadres possible dans les institutions, je pense que ça va vraiment faciliter et rendre la réponse plus rapide. Merci.
Merci. Eh bien, je suis très content que ça vienne de nous, Africains. Je pense que cette initiative va se généraliser à d'autres pays, à d'autres universités. In English. Okay. Yeah, the question was it is a good initiative in African continent. And because a lot of people in Africa still believe in response, but this is for disaster risk reduction. And this is very important when it comes from Africans that they believe in it and they accept it, then we can go forward with this and we can enhance it for all the African, and not only for African continent, but I believe now it's well accepted by the whole international scientific community that science must be there. Science must be the focus of DRR. We have seen Japan, we have seen Haiti, we have seen many of the other countries. But we need these DRRs based on sound science and research. And this is very important. Let's please lobbying for this. And thank you very much. I think this is time. Thank you. Oh,